Hi guys, welcome back to the vintage. Hi guys, I hope you're all well. Welcome back to the Watch Talk channel. Today you join us here in Kingston. Yeah. Hi guys, I hope you're all well. Welcome back to the Watch Talk channel. Today you join us here in the Gwilym Coffee House in Kensington, where I'm going to be joined once more by Alan Wood from Vintage Gold Watches London, and we're going to be talking through some of the most frequently asked questions asked by his customers. Let's get into it. Good to see you, Alan. Anyway, how are you doing?
And you, great. Yeah, I think it's great to be back, and hope you're all okay out there. So, yes, you've been busy cutting and chopping up and printing. In fact, frequently asked questions, I believe.
Got the hat of questions.
And you found a hat. Great, well done.
Yeah, it's your hat, Alan. You know that. But yeah, so let's get straight into it. I'll take out the first question.
Thanks.
Okie doke. So. Question number one, how quickly does a gold watch dull and how can I make it shiny again?
Sure, so when we prepare and we ship a watch, it's all nicely presented and polishing and nice and shiny. But we also supply a gold polishing cloth, and the reason we do that is because over time when you're wearing a watch, a solid gold watch will gradually dull, and this is just an accumulation of tarnish as a result of the mix of silver and copper in with the gold. And so this gold polishing cloth will simply remove that tarnish. It has a very mild solvent and abrasive, which just simply removes the tarnish, won't harm the gold at all, you won't lose any definition in the case, and it's designed for the job, does a great job.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I've seen the results. It is super impressive. It looks like they're been freshly machine polished or whatever, but obviously the gold's unaffected. And then the first part of the question, how quickly does that occur? I know it can be a nice ritual to polish your watches up before a wedding or whatever, but how long can people expect their watch to stay shiny?
I guess a couple of months or so, really.
Okay.
Perhaps you may begin to notice a difference after a month, but and it obviously depends on if you're wearing the watch every day. But and it depends on if you want to keep your watch really nice and shiny, then it does no harm to polish it every week or perhaps every couple of weeks.
Sure.
But yeah, the gold polishing cloth will make a huge difference after, say, 2 or 3 months.
Yeah.
You'll see a significant re-brightening of the case.
Sure. Cool, well thanks so much for clearing that up. Let's jump into the next question. Here we have another question on gold. So what is the difference? I know I struggled with this when I first got into vintage stuff. What's the difference between 9 carat, 14 carat and 18 carat gold when it comes to watches?
Yeah, so when we say we've got a gold watch here, the case isn't actually 100% gold. And the reason for that is because if it was 100% solid gold, it would damage quite easily. It wouldn't last as well as a case made of 18 karat gold, which has a mix of silver and copper, just to harden the alloy basically. Sure. And make it more suitable for everyday use. What 100% gold we call 24 carat. 18 carat is 75% or 0.75. We half that down to 9 carat, then that's 0.375, which is 37.5% solid gold. And then in the middle, we have 14 carat made predominantly for the US market.
I've come across that phenomenon in researching some gold watches. Why is it generally that 14 carat watches tend to be from the US market?
I think perhaps because during the years after the Second World War, the American market was wealthier basically, and they could afford 14 karat watches. Sure. And they weren't taxed so heavily in the US as they were in Europe.
Sure. So let's move on. Away from gold now. Can I wear a vintage watch every day, and are vintage watches accurate enough to rely upon?
Well, in fact, they are fantastically reliable, and the Swiss watch industry really has a fantastic name for precision, reliability, and accuracy. And so the answer is that a 50 or 60-year-old watch, provided it's serviced and been reasonably well maintained, will remain almost as accurate as it was when it was new. In fact, following a service, it can be made to run as accurately as it was when it was first produced.
And I guess if anything, there was even more weight put on accuracy when these watches were being made. The trials in Geneva and things like that, all competing to be accurate. Basically.
There was a great deal of publicity in the 50s and 60s and celebration for watches that won prizes at exhibitions during chronometer testing. So yeah, there was a lot of excitement about who could make the most accurate watches all the way up until around the 1970s. So a huge competition up until that point. And some of the most accurate watches ever made were made in the 1970s.
Yeah, that's not a Casio in the background, it's we're just next to the kitchen. So awesome. That was super insightful. Thanks, Ellen. Let's move on to the next question. So movements. What's the difference between manual wind, bumper, and automatic movements? And what's quartz?
Sure. So we have hand-wound watches, we have automatic watches, and we have quartz watches. So obviously a hand-wound watch is basically the simplest movement. You simply wind it up every day, and the watch will run for probably 30 to 40 hours typically. Probably only need resetting in terms of to reset the time once a week. Whereas an automatic watch, provided you wear it every day, the watch will self-wind through a rotor in the back of the watch, which moves with the movement of your wrist, and it will self-wind. So we call these self-winding watches or automatic watches.
Sure. And then where do bumpers come in when we're talking about automatics?
During the 40s and 50s, there were two popular designs of automatic watch winding mechanisms. One was the bumper, which basically is a rotor which doesn't quite rotate through 360 degrees. It's about 270 degrees, and it bounces back between two springs. The reason that most of the brands didn't use full rotor watches until the late 50s, early 60s was because Rolex had a patent on that design.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, from the 30s onwards. And I guess they managed to renew it all the way up until around 1955, I think.
Wow. Interesting. Awesome. Thanks so much. Well, let's head into the next question. So back to vintage watches. How often do I get my vintage watch serviced, and how much will it cost me?
The short answer is 3 to 5 years.
Okay.
And
surprising for me, looking at the vintage watches, that it is that long.
Yeah, it depends how often you're wearing the watch. In fact, we have many customers that wear watches, and we service them regularly for them, but they stretch the period from 5 years to 10 years even, and the watches carry on running quite reliably.
Sure. And you guys offer servicing at Vintage Gold Watches?
Yeah, we look after many customers' watches. A customer I can think of right now who wears his 1940s Oyster Perpetual every day.
Wow. And
we service that watch for him every 4 years or so, and change the straps. And
amazing.
It's super reliable. He's really pleased. He absolutely loves it.
So we'll move on to the second part of the question, the cost aspect of watch servicing. Have you got some sort of ballpark figures for different watches for us?
Yeah, we publish estimated costs for servicing a hand-wound and automatic watch, and generally, I think probably 99%, 95% perhaps of the time, the servicing will come in at the estimated price, and that's $295 for a hand-wound watch. Okay. And $395 for an automatic. Sure.
So not a ton more than your average ETA, modern ETA.
No, and in fact, often to service a Rolex, it'll cost significantly more.
A modern Rolex, that is.
A modern Rolex, yeah, a modern Rolex. We find that customers are often concerned about, the cost of replacement parts, but consumables are covered within the servicing estimate, and it's quite rare that a watch needs an expensive part. Even a mainspring is only 30 or 40 pounds to replace.
Interesting, thank you. So let's move on to one of the final, or perhaps the final question of the episode. So really, again, a common one. How do I know if a watch will fit me? I guess especially buying online a lot these days, lots of vintage watches online, it can be difficult to judge different wrist sizes, different case sizes.
It's really a case of just adjusting to the fact that a vintage watch is going to be smaller, and it depends on your build really, but and it's partly to do with taste and preferences, but generally a 33 or 34 millimeter watch, once you've got used to the fact that the vintage watches are smaller, it looks quite at home on an average build wrist.
Sure.
And 36 millimeter watches up to 38 is probably the largest we see. And if you do want a large watch, then generally perhaps a chronograph is the watch to go for.
And I've also seen the facility on your website with reference photos, I think going from 31 all the way up to 38 with watch shots, and then also the printout band that you can sort of try on.
We have a cutout which you can print out as a reference for your wrist size.
Good stuff. Well, we've got an empty hat now, so I guess that means we're approaching the end of the video, but thanks so much, Alan, some really insightful answers. And if you've got any more questions for Alan about vintage watches, do let us know in the comments below, and we'll be sure to come back with a part 2 sometime in the near future. But until then, thanks so much, Alan. It's great to see you.
Thanks to you, Patrick.
Cheers. Thanks.